Welcome to Wineline TV and Wineline Radio. Today we're going to be speaking with David Fuhrer and Pancho Campos regarding the Climate Change Leadership Conference Solutions for the Wine Industry, which is going to happen the 5th through the 7th of March in Porto, Portugal.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. And you, David, are you there?
I am indeed, Robert. Good to speak with you again.
Well, nice to speak with you. And I don't know who to pose this to, maybe to Pancho. Can you give us a brief history of the initiative?
Yeah, we started talking about climate change and wine back in 2006. That's when we created the first World Conference on Climate Change and Wine. Those were early days. Not many people were talking about climate change, let alone in the wine industry. But for the second edition in 2008, I managed to convince Vice President Al Gore. And at the time, he was on the crest of the wave because he had just won the Oscar, he had just won the Nobel Peace Prize, and his movie was everywhere. So we had a big successful event in Barcelona. Then 3 years later, we did another edition, and the keynote speaker, apart from the leading names from the industry, the keynote speaker was Secretary General Kofi Annan. Now, because of the international economical recession, we had to stop the event for a few years, and it was in 2017 when I met with Adrian Bridge, the CEO for Taylor's Port, who encouraged me to try to organize a similar event in Porto. But we decided that we wanted to change completely the approach, and that's why we added the name Solutions to the Wine Industry. So far, most of the conference were talking about the problem, and he was adamant that we had to tackle the solutions that have been put in place in different wine regions around the world. And that's how the whole thing started. And we were very lucky to have President Barack Obama in this new edition of the event in July 2006. So that's basically the history behind the conference.
That's very interesting, and it's great that you're focusing on solutions rather than problems. It's always good to add a positive aspect to an initiative like this. David, can you tell us what's the current reality of the climate of wine?
Well, as Pancho had mentioned, what happened in the early 2000s with Al Gore's movie, bringing to light these issues to a broader public in the United States and throughout the world as well. In 2003, I was living in Europe, and 2003 was the landmark summer, which broke all living records for heat in Europe and other parts of the world, but primarily in Europe. And I was living there, and it had a great effect upon what resulted with wine from that vintage. That was another part of what had alerted Pancho to what was going on. So the current reality is quite complex. There's some potential positives, but that's not what really trying to bear in mind, because wherever there's positives in the changed climate, there's always negatives. It's a broad, large issue. It's not just a question of, in Germany, having more consistent vintages of ripe Riesling, or the fact that sparkling wine in England now is enjoying a resurgence, not having seen since the warming periods of the Middle Ages. There's a great number of effects taking place throughout the world, and it's not only in the viticultural aspect, it's also the impact on carbon emissions conducted by supporting industries and in shipping wine, in producing wineries and packaging issues. So these are complex issues that we are addressing at the Climate Change Leadership Conference next month.
It's very interesting to me as I talk to winemakers and wine farmers and winery owners. They are beginning to really take a notice. In the past 10, 15, 20 years, 100 years, everybody talked about terroir. But now they're talking about how the climate is affecting the terroir. And, wise winemakers are adapting their techniques in order to try to overcome some of these issues.
Well, from my studies, as I recall, the broad concept of terroir had always included climate. It wasn't exited to it. It's an essential part of it, and people were looking upon terroir as just the soil. It's far more than that. And climate is essentially equal, if not superior to soil in what happens with wine at the beginning, middle, and end.
From my point of view, the reason why terroir is changing is because climate change affects things like ultraviolet radiation, climate, humidity, rainfall. And if you change those patterns, you are actually changing the life and the biodiversity of the soil and also of the microclimate. So climate is a very essential part of terroir. And the changes in climate will not affect only the climate itself, but the life that is within the terroir, within the soil. All the microorganisms that inhabit the soil of a terroir, which are, it's part of the concept of terroir and the character of a wine, are starting to be affected by the changes in the climate.
I see. And, if I'm thinking like a winery owner, I am thinking about the commercial aspects of the winery and what is the commercial impact in the change of climate on the industry?
Well, that is the biggest and strongest selling point when you're trying to convince people that climate change is an issue to consider. Now, if you look at, for example, Spain has had in the last 10 years the 4 or 5 years with the strongest drought. The moment you have drought, you have less yields on the vineyard. Less yields is equivalent to less wine being produced. That in itself carries a tremendous economical impact for the people producing the grapes, but also for the winemakers selling the wine. That's just to give you an example of how climate change has already started impacting the vineyard. Climate change also affects things like acidity, levels of alcohol, phenolic maturation, which forces the winemaker to make more adjustments. The more intervention is equivalent to higher costs within the winery. And also, if you have to change the canopy management, you have to change your viticultural practices, that will have immediately an economical impact.
The technologies and regulations, are they changing too to help mitigate this impact?
Well, adjacent to what Pancho had mentioned, it's also the issue of impact of labor. Not all labor at wineries is year-round full-time, and it's quite common for winery managers or vineyard managers to arrange for workers to be available at certain periods of time. And if climate change, and it has had this effect in many places in many different ways, shifts the seasons. It's not a question of it being hotter within the normal season, it's or colder or rainier. Sometimes the beginning of, so let's say, the rainy season will be 2 weeks earlier or 2 weeks later, based upon the impact of climate change to a particular region, and that impacts when it is these work crews are scheduled to show up at a particular place and time, and that's a very complex, difficult issue for winery management to consider.
Wow, that certainly would be a major economic consideration for the winery. What topics are going to be covered at the Porto Protocol?
Well, I can take you through the topics, but before I would like to explain that there's a slight difference in what the conference is all about from the Porto Protocol.
Oh, okay.
The Porto Protocol is an initiative that was created as a result of the climate change conference. It was launched by President Barack Obama. He made the presentation of the protocol, the initiative, and we have been working in this idea for the last year. And the Porto Protocol is a non-profit initiative. It's being set up as a foundation, and it's free of charge, and it has two very simple goals. One, if you adhere to the Porto Protocol, we ask you to commit to do a little bit more of what you have been doing so far. And second is that you make a commitment to share any case studies, any research, any success story that you think that the people that are also members of the Porto Protocol can learn and take that as an inspiration to solve similar problems in their own wine regions. That's in essence the Porto Protocol.
I see, and that's a worldwide initiative, I would suspect.
That is a worldwide initiative, but also it's an initiative that is, we have already signed up more than 150 companies. And interestingly, a lot of those companies not only are directly related to the wine industry, we have companies like, for example, Toyota or Price Waterhouse, that they have realized that this could be a benchmark. And the wine industry, through the Porto Protocol, can show its leadership that can be applied in other industries.
And this is this initiative is being directly supported by the conference itself. Basically, the conference, the ongoing work from the conference will express itself through the Porto Protocol.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Now, if you want me to describe the most important topics that are going to be covered at the conference, I can take you through very quickly through the program.
I think that would be very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, the program will start on the afternoon of March the 5th, and it's when we open the trade show area. We do the welcome ceremony for all the speakers, and all day on March the 6th is dedicated to solutions to the wine industry. And we start, for example, with a session that we call New Responses to Climate Change, and we have asked Miguel Torres, Cristina Mariani-May from Banfi, and Margaret Enriquez from LVMH to explain what they have been doing in their wineries, in their different projects. And the moderator is nobody else than Professor Greg Jones, probably the guy that is the point of reference in the study of climate change in the wine industry. We will continue with a session that we call Home and Around the World, describing what the Iberian Peninsula has been doing to cope with and mitigate climate change, but also around the world, with three very interesting speakers, Antonio Brasa from Portugal, Kim Nicholas, and the moderator there is Greg Jones as well. And also we have a representative for Concha y Toro in Chile, Gerard Casabon. After a little break, we go into the consumer expectations and sensible marketing. That session should emphasize the importance of learning from and communicating with consumers. The next session is Winery of the Future with Professor Roger Boulton, who has recently retired from UC Davis, moderated by Jamie Good. And Professor Boulton will explain the winery that they designed as a winery of the future at UC Davis. Then in the afternoon, we will continue with vineyard development with a couple of experts from Francisco Lopez from Spain, Gilles Decote from Boulanger.
Yep.
Yeah, and Jose Buyemus, the world famous grape expert. Then we have a session that we call a report from Adviclin with Carlos Miranda, Chris Foss, Joel Rochard, again moderated by Jose Buyemus. And the Life Adviclin project develops climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies, and it demonstrates their applications at the vineyard scale. And then that day we have two more sessions. One is on water management, where we have Carlos Cosin. He was awarded the unofficial title of Mr. Water. Apparently, he's the biggest expert on hydric resources and water management, especially in agriculture. And then a gentleman that we have invited from South Africa. I'm sure you are aware that Cape Town was very close to reaching day zero, and this gentleman used to work for the government of Cape Town as a water and drought expert. So we think that he has a lot to contribute. And we finished that day with a session about energy with Jaume Gramona, He's a cabo producer in Spain, and he'll tell the people how he's using geothermal energy, and the moderator there is Cyril Penn. Now, the next...
And joining him, if I might ask, Katie Jackson of Jackson's Family Winery.
Oh, really? I have a meeting with her next week on the 21st.
Yeah, the Jackson family have been leaders in California in addressing all sorts of issues regarding sustainability. In this session, she'll be with Senor Gramona talking about the energy issues. Cyril Penn of Wine Business Monthly, previous to his taking over the leadership of that important trade monthly out of California, he was actually very much involved in business and energy issues as a middle-of-the-road journalist, shall we say.
Okay, yes, that's
March the 7th. The morning is dedicated to solutions to the wine industry, and we start with sustainability, biodiversity, and soil management. And there we have, the Gerard Bertrand from the winery that has his name in the Languedoc, Olga Barbosa from the Universidad Austral in south of Chile, and Henrik Sloms, which is another water and vineyard expert from South Africa. And David, if you remind me, who will be the moderator there?
We just acquired João Barrosa, who's in charge of the sustainability issues for Vinos do Alentejo in Portugal. Very learned guy, specifically in these issues, and he's had a lot of international background too. So he'll be moderating these three other esteemed panelists.
Then the next session is about packaging and transportation, perhaps two of the issues that are more carbon consuming. And then we have Tiago Moreira, Kim Carstensen, Vicente Sanchez from Spain, and the moderator is the British journalist Richard Siddle. And the last session of the climate change, the wine solutions for the wine industry, is efficiency and economics. There we're going to talk about money, actually, the question that you prompted before. And we have two experts, Stephen Vanakia from Rabobank and Malcolm Preston. And the moderator will be Mike Besseth from the Journal of Wine Economy. And in the afternoon is when we have the big shots. We have four speakers. We start with Afroz Shah as an example of that the effort of one man counts. This is a gentleman that started cleaning the beaches of Mumbai, and that video went viral, and now he goes around the world cleaning different parts of the planet from plastics, and he has even turned places that were a complete dumpster into regeneration of species. Then we have, that is at the individual level. Then we have at the company level, Kai Torop. He is the CEO for a burger chain that not only wants to be carbon neutral, but they want to be carbon positive as a way of compensating for the pollution that selling burgers can represent. Then we move into the ONG approach, and there we have the WWF. We have the Director General for the WWF. And to close the event, we have Vice President Al Gore.
Well, that's a pretty heady lineup, if I must say so. If someone wants to know more about the conference, where can they find the information?
Well, quite readily, the website climatechange-porto.com will provide them the full information about the conference and its speakers and what the initiative is, what the conference is trying to accomplish, both in the short and long term. It's packed with details for anybody interested in the conference in particular. The Porto Protocol Initiative is at portoprotocol.com. And it's all laid out there. What all the details of that are to be covered and within, and what the ongoing work stemming from the conference will be. In addition to that, we're engaged in social media communications, and watch your TV stations, websites of your favorite wine magazines. We have sponsorships and media partners from around the world. And so keep abreast through all those communication streams.
Yes, and let me ask that, should a wine industry executive get excited about this and want to jump in with 2 feet, are there any sponsorships still available?
Yes, absolutely. We do have a trade show area with 2 types of stands. One is the simple table for wineries that want to show their wines. And then we have a small stand where people can show not only the wines that they're producing, but also it's for companies that have indirect relation to the wine industry or no relation at all to the wine industry. And they want to show what are they doing in regards to protecting the environment. And there are other opportunities of sponsorship still available. For example, if somebody wanted to sponsor the official lunch or the welcome cocktail, that's still up for sponsorship. Not many opportunities available, but we still have a few of them.
Thank you, Robert. And I'd be remiss in not mentioning that it was our great pleasure for President Barack Obama to have launched last July the Porto Protocol, and our keynote speaker and the man who will be relaunching the Porto Protocol at the conference will be Nobel laureate and former Vice President Al Gore.
Well, let me say that from an outside observer, not only is this an incredibly important and critical topic of conversation that must happen, you also have just an astounding array of top speakers that will make this event really worthwhile to anybody that wants to attend or sponsor. So looking forward to hearing more about it, and I wish you both great success in this endeavor. And hey, climate change leadership and solutions for the wine industry are something we all need to be involved in. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Robert.
And Pancho, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much for your help.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.